Welcome to the Living Centred podcast, a podcast all about learning together how to live lives which are centred on Jesus. Everyone lives centred on something. Our goal is to learn together how every area of our lives, everything about who we are and how we live, can be increasingly oriented around Jesus and transformed by Jesus. He invites us to a rich and satisfying life, where the good news that he truly is enough changes everything about how we relate to God, ourselves, and the world. In each episode, a different person shares about what it's looking like for them to seek to centre their life on Jesus right now. As we hear their stories, we get to learn together and to encourage one another in what it means for Jesus to be at the centre of our lives. This is a journey we are all invited to, and a conversation we all get to be a part of. Thanks for joining us.
It is my privilege to introduce today David, who will be sharing with us this week. Dave, it is so good to see you.
Good to be here.
I wonder if you could just start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what your life looks like.
Yep, I obviously live in Birmingham. I've actually lived in Birmingham the last 21 years and part of Oasis for pretty much all of that period. I am husband to Neris. I am father to Anna, Daniel and James. Anna's 20 and the boys are twin boys and they're 17. So we're in that life stage of transitioning from having children to probably shortly living just the two of us. And I work leading essentially a technology team for a large industrial waste businesses based in High Wycombe. So travel a fair bit, or certainly didn't travel during the pandemic much, but we're getting back to traveling again. So spending a fair bit of time on the M40. And I'm also a trustee and part of the leadership team at Oasis.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Dave. I guess we'll jump straight in, as is the way with us, is therefore, what does living centered on Jesus look like for you right now?
Good question.
It is.
I mean, I would say I became a Christian when I was 5. And actually, I think, and I don't know whether it's a time of life thing or it's a natural way that our relationship with Jesus sort of grows and deepens over time. But I would say definitely in this season of life, I think it's probably fair to say I'm probably the most satisfied in him for me. And I think actually a lot of the journey that we've been on as a church and as a body has been so important. For me, it's definitely all about consistency. So something that it is about a daily rhythm, that it can't be a weekly rhythm. It can't be something that I hinge my relationship around a Sunday or pattern it around, just connecting with people, but it's very much a daily rhythm. And it's to me, actually, it's increasingly much more important rather than activity, it being about connection. And saying all of this, I mean, there's the caveat that I have definitely got so much further to go in this.
Indeed. All of us have.
But definitely it's the quality of that that's the really important thing, rather than saying, well, I've ticked off every done a Bible reading, done some prayer, done this, done that, the other. And being a task-orientated person, that has been a challenge for me, actually. Yeah. That it's got to be much more about being than it is about doing.
That's really helpful, the being and not doing. And so in that, I guess, what helps you seek to live that way? What's helping you at the moment in terms of ensuring that you're getting that quality time, but seeking to be, not just simply do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there'll be no massive surprises in this, because what is helping me is how I'm centering stuff around the Bible, what I'm doing in terms of prayer, what I'm doing in terms of worship, and then just about making space for God, really. So Bible reading, I would say my love for the Bible has grown hugely over the last number of years. And again, I don't know, that's just some of the sort of time and capacity I've got now, a bit more to spend more time reading the Bible. But I'm in a pattern currently where most days I'm trying to be reading something. That doesn't happen every day. There's some days I leave the house really early and I'll maybe try and factor something else in on those days. But recently I'm in a pattern where I'm really enjoying reading only generally about a chapter from the New Testament and also then a chapter from the Old Testament, and in some ways trying to look at books that do potentially pair together a little bit. but just actually enjoying that sense of the continuity and the connectedness of the whole of the Bible story from beginning to end, and actually that being so important of seeing who Jesus is in the light of the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been enormously helpful. And again, I mean, things like the Bible Project has been really helpful to me in terms of bringing to life such a different way of looking at the Bible, where I would so struggle. And to be honest, this parts of we're reading through Joshua at the moment, and in the light of what's happening in Israel, actually, I'm finding it really hard reading, and it's complicated, and it's actually can leave you feeling very conflicted. But yeah, the Bible Project has really helped open my eyes into ways of looking at the Bible and actually, really rooting it in its cultural context that then I find really challenging in terms of going slow enough to actually really do some of that thinking, and that I guess meditation is enormously formative.
That's really good.
I do find as well at various points, like Bible plan type books, Neris and I are reading through a book that we're both finding really enriching at the moment. And again, that's something that takes a good sort of 20 minutes to do well, to read a chapter and actually really pause and think about it. But that's been enormously helpful. And then there's my car journey time. I try to use some of that mainly in the morning because to be honest, my energy is best in the morning. I don't actually get very far with anything in the evenings.
It's good to know ourselves.
Yeah. So it's trying to capitalize on the time where I feel I've got the most capacity really to engage deeply. And so actually, but a number of podcasts that I'd listen to in the car on the way down, have a bit of a cycle of those. And again, I go through cycles where I at times get bored of things, or it becomes too routine, and then it's just about an activity or a task, and I need to then kind of shake it up and try something different. Prayer is an area I'd definitely like to invest more time and space for me in prayer. And I feel like I'm probably in a bit of a cycle where if things are difficult or I've got things really heavily on my mind, then I'm more focused, and I'm almost, I guess, focused in a sort of continual prayer type way of just lifting things up to God. But I do feel close to him in that as well. But just even, choosing to intentionally pause at the end of the day and actually then offer things up to him, just allow him to come and help me take the things of the day off and really enter a state of rest is great. But prayer is something I would like more time to do. Worship music is really helpful for me for a sense of connectedness. And again, it's really similar. I seem to go through cycles where the songs that really stirred my heart at one point then become dry things. I'm just trying to reproduce the same thing I felt before, and it's discovering new music, or even going back and discovering old music that then moves you again. But yeah, I did a solo retreat last year, which was phenomenally helpful, just in terms of taking, I think I was only there 2 nights, but just taking real intentional time out to pray, journal, and focus and read the Bible. And that actually, again, was so formative for, just helping me through the rest of the year. And again, something I'd like to have more time to do, but was really useful.
It sounds really good. And it sounds as though within those different practices that you're doing is this way of approaching it that is just seeking to slow yourself down in order that you're present and notice things, which I find just really helpful. And just in that, I guess what you call just allowing space for God within the thing, rather than it just being a thing in itself, which is just really helpful, whether it's reading the Bible, praying, which are good things in themselves, but it's like, how am I giving space for God in this? It's just really helpful. My next question is then, what is it that you feel you're discovering as you're doing this at the moment? What are you discovering about Jesus, the Father, the Spirit? What's that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've probably said it just there, that actually God is always speaking, but I need to slow down in order to hear him, to be able to go at that pace where you're really able to receive him and receive what he's saying. And I guess massively just sort of encouraged that the more time I commit, the more you see there's just depths to be discovered. There is definitely for me more room for slowing down, more room for contemplation, and that really allowing God then to shape who I am. And I guess, from the Bible, just so encouraged that everything we need to know for life is modeled in the person of Jesus. And that there's no way to kind of exhaust that there's always something new to be revealed in what it is to be God's image as seen in Jesus, and how he demonstrated that, and how we just discover more and more about who he is through the Gospels, through his word.
It's really good. It's really good. And so last question then is, I guess, how is all of this changing you as an individual? Like if we were to wind back the clock and say 3-6 months ago, we were kind of having this chat, how do you feel like you would have changed over the last 3-6 months in all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think more over the recent couple of years, actually. I've got a hunger and a depth of desire for more of his presence that I think wasn't there in the same way. I think that was there perhaps more in my earlier journey of faith with him, and that desire for more, I think, is definitely back. That hunger to just experience his presence in real ways. I've definitely got a greater love of the word, for his word, than I think I've ever had, which is cool. But also, all said with the fact that there's always more. I think the other thing I would say is I am probably more than ever actually convinced of the need for me to be kinder and more gracious to myself. So the more I experience his love, the more it reminds me that actually a lot of the expectations around me that are either placed on me by myself actually often, or by others, are not actually the expectations he has of me, and that there's room for me to take some of that off and actually be kinder, gracious to myself, slow down, enjoy him more.
Sounds amazing. Sounds really good. So good. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for sharing. I know for me, I think the thing I'm going to be considering over the coming week is going to be that whole aspect of just slowing down within what I'm praying, within what I'm reading, within the moments of just giving space to allow God to just do what God's going to do in that moment. So struck by where Dave, you were sharing just the wonder of how God's always looking to speak to us. It's just, have we slowed down enough to listen? And I think I just want to contemplate that a bit more. How about you, my listening friends? What are you going to be considering out of all the richness of what David has shared today? I hope that you get some time to consider that thing. Just also to mention that we'll put a link in the blurb around this podcast, the notes on this podcast, in terms of the Bible Project podcast, is something that David shared, just because it is a phenomenal resource that will do you good. And we'll just give you a link as to how you can get to connect with that. Lastly, just to say thank you for listening, and I pray you would know more of the wonder of living centered on Jesus this coming week.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the Living Centered podcast. New episodes are released every Monday, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do like and subscribe on your chosen podcast provider to receive them direct each week. Living Centered is produced by the team at Oasis Church in Birmingham, UK, and you can find out more and get in touch with the team via theoasischurch.com.